What are the greatest poems of all time? Several names might come to mind. The Iliad, Shakespeare's sonnets, the Mahabharata. But what if I told you there was a poem that rivals all of these for its beauty, its style, and above all, its wisdom? And barely anyone in the West has even heard of it. This is the Conference of the Birds, a 12th century allegorical poem written by the Persian Sufi mystic Attar of Nishapur. After discovering this poem late last year, I have already read it twice. I have been blown away by the depth of its meaning. In fact, I don't even think it's an exaggeration to say that this poem has been life-changing. It has forced me to reevaluate my lifestyle and beliefs, and I hope it can do the same for you. So what is the Conference of the Birds? Why is it so good? And why does its message provide such a potent antidote to many of the flaws of our society in the West in 2025? Well, first, let's figure out who Farud al-Din Attar, the author of the Conference of the Birds, was. Unfortunately, going on that quest poses a bit of a problem, namely, we don't really know much about Attar at all. His pen name, Attar, means a perfumer or an apothecary. A pharmacist, in other words, and all the existing records we have do tell us that Attar was indeed a pharmacist. We also know he was from Nishapur, a city in northeastern Iran. In Attar's lifetime, the city changed hands between various Persianized Turkic empires, the Seljuks, the Ghaznavids, and the Khwarezmians. Khorasan, the historical region where Nishapur can be found, is an exceptionally important place for the development of Islam and Islamic culture. But of course, Attar was also a poet, and he was also a Sunni Muslim as well as being a Sufi. Now, Sufism is essentially the mystical tendency inside the religion of Islam. The Sufi path advocates for adherents to cultivate detachment from this world and to seek direct, personal connection to God through emptying oneself of selfish desires. The poem actively advocates the path of asceticism, meditation, and introspection, and it rejects religious dogma and ceremony in favor of personal faith and experience. While there is no record of Attar being a member of any Sufi brotherhood, the Conference of the Birds makes abundantly clear that he belonged to this tradition. Many of the characters in the poem's parables are bedraggled dervishes, Sufi wanderers and wayward sheikhs, grappling with the depths of their longing for God or skewering pompous and self-involved members of society. While Attar did not achieve much fame outside of his home city of Nishapur in his own lifetime, after he died, his fame skyrocketed. But how can we understand who Attar was? How can we understand the depth of this man if the details of his biography are so scant? The only way is through the work he left us. So what is his masterpiece, the Conference of the Birds? Firstly, I want to preface this by saying I want this video to essentially be an advert for the book. You really should go out and get yourself a copy. As such, I'm going to be quoting from the book at length. So I use this, the Penguin Classics version. It's translated by Afkam Dalbandi and Dick Davis, and I've got to say, these gentlemen did an absolutely exquisite job. This really is beautifully translated. The poem begins with, as the title suggests, a meeting of all of the world's feathery critters. The birds decide that they need to have a king because every proper nation has a king, and yet they don't. It is the wise Hoopoe, who once served King Solomon, who suggests that the birds seek out the Simorg. The Simorg is an all-powerful bird who lives on the other side of the earth, in distant China. He reigns in undisturbed omnipotence, bathed in the light of his magnificence. No mind, no intellect can penetrate the mystery of his unending state. Who does that sound like? As you can probably guess, the Simorg is an analogy for God, the one true king, and the birds, like the faithful, must quest to find him. Likewise, the Hoopoe in the story fulfills the role of the Sufi master or sheikh, someone who can lead the pupil to the truth. But the quest is hard. It is grueling and long. Of the thousands or tens of thousands of birds who journey out to meet the Simorg, only 30 survive. The poem is a description of this quest, but mostly takes the form of various birds complaining about how they can't go on the quest anymore, they're not suitable for it, they're not up for it, making various excuses, and the Hoopoe shooting down these excuses with very appealing and penetrating parables. For example, at one point an ostentatious bird tries to give up on searching for the Simorg because he doesn't want to abandon all the riches he's accumulated. So this is the story that the hoopoe responds to him with, illustrating the vanity of attachment to material things. You've seen an active spider work. He seems to spend his life in self-communing dreams. In fact, the web he spins is evidence that he's endowed with some far-sighted sense. He drapes a corner with his cunning snare and waits until a fly is entangled there, then dashes out and sucks the meagre blood of his bewildered, buzzing, dying food. He'll dry the carcass then, and live off it for days, consuming bit by tasty bit, until the owner of the house one day will reach up casually to knock away the cunning spider's home, and with her broom she clears both fly and spider from the room. Now, once the birds have finally all convinced to follow the hoopoe to the end of their journey to try and find the Simorg, they then subsequently travel through 7 valleys, representing the different stages of the Sufi path, until they finally reach their destination. And what do they find there? One of the most profound things I have ever read. But I'm jumping the gun. Let's cover the poem's key themes first, and then we'll return to the ending towards the end of this video. So the first of these themes is the necessity of destroying one's own self, one's ego. The path to union with God involves annihilating the ego or the false self. This is insisted upon repeatedly in the Conference of the Birds. The self that is described here is the part of you which clings on to the world. It clings to worldly pleasures and comforts. It judges and belittles the parts of you which puff yourself up. This is poison. The Sufi path, the antidote. The self squint-eyed and cannot lead you well. Part dog, part parasite, part infidel. There's no hope for the self. The dog grows fatter the more it hears men fawn, deceive, and flatter. And it's important to say that the annihilation of the self in the Conference of the Birds doesn't leave you with a void, but with immersion in the light of God. I speak of I. In truth, there is no I, where logic falters and the mind must die. I lose myself within myself. I seek for strength in being poor, despised, and weak. When poverty's bright sun shines over me, a window opens on reality. I see both worlds, and in that light I seem like water lost in water's moving stream. All that I ever lost or ever found is in the depths of that black deluge, drowned. I too am lost. I leave no trace, no mark. I am a shadow cast upon the dark, a drop sunk in the sea, and it is vain to search the sea for that one drop again. This nothingness is not for everyone, yet many seek it out as I have done. And who would reach this far and not aspire to nothingness, the pilgrim's last desire? Another major theme of this work is love. Passionate and relentless love for God. This love for God is often described as an all-consuming flame which one has to immerse themselves in. Now again, the poem is so good at expressing its own themes that I feel like I have to quote it to you again. But you're here for the greatest poem you've never heard of, right? No, not me. Listen now to how Attar conceptualizes divine love. I find the simplicity and humility of this story deeply moving. In the story, the Ghaznavid conqueror Shah Mahmud represents God, and the humble bath attendant, a pious Sufi. Shah Mahmud, full of sorrow, went one night to one who keeps the bath's huge fires alight. The man made room among the ash and grime, feeding the furnace mouth from time to time, then brought the king some stale, unwholesome bread. When he knows who I am, Shah Mahmud said, he'll beg to be allowed to keep his head. When, finally, the king prepared to go, the poor man said, I haven't much to show. You've seen my home and food. I brought the best. You are a rather unexpected guest. But if in future you feel sorrow's pain, I hope you'll come and be my guest again. If you weren't king, you could be happy, sire. I'm happy shoveling wood on this great fire. So I'm not less than you, or more, you see. I'm nothing next to you, your majesty. The king was so impressed that he returned and 7 times saw how that furnace burned. At last he said, Stop stoking this great fire and ask from me whatever you require. I am a beggar, lord, the man replied, and with a king all needs are satisfied. Shah Mahmud said, "Speak up, ask anything. You can forget the furnace and be king." He said, "My hope is this, that now and then my king will visit me in this dark den. The dust he treads on is a crown to me. His presence here will be my monarchy. Yours is the kingdom and the hand that gives, but that's not how a bath attendant lives. Better to sit with you in this foul place than reign in state and never see your face. This spot has brought me luck, and I'd be wrong to leave the furnace mouth where I belong. Besides, it's here I made friends with my king. I wouldn't give this up for anything. When you are here, the bathhouse shines anew. What more could I desire from you than you? May my perverse heart die if it should crave another fate than to remain your slave. What's sovereignty to me? All I request is that from time to time you'll be my guest. The bath attendant's love should teach you yours. Learn from him all the loving heart endures, and if this love has stirred in you, then cling with passion to the garments of your king. He too is moved. Hold fast and do not stop. He is a sea. He asks of you one drop. Finally, another theme in the poem is the unity of being. There is a concept in Sufism very much associated with a contemporary of Attar, except he was an Andalusian from Spain, a guy called Ibn Arabi. This concept associated with him is called Wahdat al-wujud. But Wahdat al-wujud essentially means the unity of being. Essentially, many Sufis believed in a kind of monism. That is, the belief that there is only one thing or substance that exists, and that substance is God. All of existence is therefore seen as a kind of reflection or emanation of God. The only thing that really exists is God, and God is an absolute oneness. Therefore, everything is one. Everything is unified. This idea of a fundamental non-dual reality which underlies all of the apparent diversity of the world is very apparent at the Conference of the Birds. It's very stirringly evoked in this passage, "The world compared to a wax toy," one of my favourite passages from the whole poem, and we've already had some great ones. I've actually committed this one to memory. I learnt it off by heart because I just think it's so cool. You'll see what I mean now. Once someone asked a dervish to portray the nature of this world in which we stray. He said, "This various world is like a toy, a coloured palm tree given to a boy but made of wax. Now knead it in your fist, and there's the wax of which its shapes consist. The lovely forms and colours are undone, and what seemed many things is only one." All things are one. There isn't any two. It isn't me who speaks. It isn't you. Intriguingly, there are also very stirring examples of religious tolerance in the Conference of the Birds, maybe surprisingly. Now, why would Attar have that belief? Let me be clear, of course, Attar was a Muslim, an Orthodox Sunni Muslim, and there are several stories in the poem about how Islam is a superior creed to other religions. Nevertheless, the examples of toleration are quite remarkable. For example, there's a story about a Sufi sheikh who becomes a Zoroastrian. Zoroastrianism is an ancient Iranian religion. It's generally not given much tolerance by Islam. That Islam traditionally gives tolerance to people of the book, i.e. Christians and Jews, but Zoroastrianism, that falls outside of that. Yet in the story, the Sufi sheikh, he identifies the Zoroastrian sacred fire, because fire worship is part of that religion. He identifies this with the fire of divine love that can burn away his false self. In another story, a Sufi passes a Jewish cemetery and says, "These souls are pardoned and go free." But this is not a truth that can be taught. Furthermore, there are several sympathetic references to the 10th century Sufi martyr al-Hallaj. Hallaj was killed in Baghdad for his statement, "An al-Haq," or "I am the truth." But al-Haq is one of the names of God in Islam. It means the truth. And so people killed Hallaj because they believed he was saying, "I am God." And it seems like this wide tolerance given to non-Muslims and heterodox Muslim figures is in some sense a product of the idea that God is in some way being or existence itself. If God is being, then all things, even unorthodox, non-Islamic things, are in some sense part of God. They reflect God in some way. According to the Sufis, the paths to God, therefore, are manifold. Our pathways differ, No bird ever knows the secret route by which another goes. Our insight comes to us by different signs. One prays in mosques, and one in idols' shrines. But when truth's sunlight clears the upper air, each pilgrim sees that he is welcomed there. But it is true unity, the dissolving of oneself inside of God, like a giant barocca in a glowing ocean. You know? That's the ultimate quest. That's the end of the Sufi quest. It's the ultimate goal. And this brings us to the end of the poem, which frankly, it made my jaw drop. I'm actually really reluctant to tell you the ending because it's so worth reading for yourself. So, spoiler alert, but I will tell you if you want to know. After this long and grueling quest, the 30 birds reach the land of the Simorg, only to be refused by a herald. But at this final obstacle, the birds hold fast, they remain firm and say they would rather meet the Simorg, they'd rather be in the presence of the Simorg, even if he rejected them, than not to see him at all. His presence is what matters beyond all else. So the herald relents and lets the 30 birds in to see their king at last. So, what do they see? There, in the Simorg's radiant face, they saw themselves, the Simorg of the world. With awe they gazed and dared at last to comprehend they were the Simorg and the journey's end. They see the Simorg, at themselves they stare and see a second Simorg standing there. They look at both and see the two are one, that this is that this, the goal is one. So the divine is within us, as well as without us. The treasure we seek was with us the whole time, closer to us than our jugular vein. The seeker was always part of God. The quest, God experiencing himself. So, to wrap things up, what happened to Attar? Unfortunately, his life of love came to a very dark end. In the early 1200s, the Islamic world was devastated by thousands of infidel horsemen from Mongolia. The city of Nishapur rebelled against Mongol rule and was implicated in a plot that killed none other than Genghis Khan's son-in-law. In revenge, the Mongols brutally sacked the city in the year 1221. All men, women, children, and animals were brutally put to death, piled up in mass graves. The earth of the city was ploughed over. Somewhere, amidst the stench of death, crammed under a mountain of bloody limbs, lay the broken body of a man in his 70s, Attar of Nishapur, an old mystic whose love of his god could not save him from the cruelty of the invaders. But death, perhaps, would not have come as a surprise to Attar, who was finely attuned to the impermanence of everything in the world. Good pilgrim ask, where is Muhammad? Where? And where is Adam and his every heir? Where are the earth, the mountains and the sea? Where are the angels and humanity? Where are the bodies buried underground? Where are their minds, so subtle and profound? Where is the pain of death? Where is the soul? Where are the sundered parts? Where is the whole? Sift through the universe, and it will seem an airy maze, an insubstantial dream. Yet, in Attar's work, I'd argue we do have something permanent, something universal. And that is the message of love and humility that he seeded for millions of people to read forever after. It's a message that personally moves me to my core. If all people followed this path of love and transcendence, I just can't imagine that the world wouldn't be a better place. In fact, as I hope you can tell from this video, the beauty and ingenuity of Attar's work has changed me. This is because it seems so clear to me that he was writing from actual experience of something transcendent, something spiritual, something divine. Whether we think that that is actually real, I think he was experiencing something profound. There's no doubt in my mind that the profundity and exquisite subtlety of his poetry literally stemmed from his deep commitment to his faith. Attar's level of dedication and the depth of his spiritual language has made it impossible for me to hold him at arm's length, to consider him as just a historical oddity, a medieval mystic in a foreign land with a foreign faith who's just intellectual fodder for my YouTube video. No, instead I've been confronted Confronted first with shame. Shame that I can recognize the intense value of Attar's philosophy and yet fail to live up to so many of its precepts. But the Conference of the Birds also gives me hope. Hope that's generated by a realization that there are experiences and ways of living and thinking that can generate authentic beauty and wisdom and overwhelming love. And when it comes to the love of Attar, arguably the greatest of all Sufi poets, Jalal al-Din Rumi, had this to say: Attar has roamed through the 7 cities of love, while we have barely turned down the first street. A worthy epitaph indeed, although perhaps the legacy of this great man and poet, perhaps one of the greatest who's ever lived, was summed up best by, well, himself, of course. If the 9 spheres should perish, this account will not diminish by the least amount. And if its words remove the veil and show even one man the way that he must go, so that he's comforted by what he's read, then may he pray for me when I am dead. I've strewn my roses here. Remember me, my friends, when I am gone, with sympathy. Since after his own fashion each man shows a little of himself, then quickly goes. Like those who've gone before, I with my words have shown to sleeping men their souls as birds. And if these words can prompt one heart to wake from lifelong stupor for their mystery's sake, I'll know, I'll have no doubt that all my pain and grief are over and were not in vain. I will have been a lamp, a candle's light that burns itself and makes the whole world bright. If you enjoyed this video, please consider buying and reading The Conference of the Birds. I guarantee you, you will not regret it. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, please like it. Please, let's get a comment section going, a conversation, and share it if you really liked it. And of course, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.